Hey gang, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, and today I'm going to help you simplify and enrich the way the storylines of your homebrewed world unfold. And to do that, what I'm going to talk about is kind of the storytelling model that I use or think about when I'm playing a role-playing game, especially one, as I say, that's homebrewed, sandbox, however you want to put that, where the players are going through your world, making decisions about what to do, and then influencing what happens. So it simplifies your process by reacting to what the players are doing, but it also enriches this because when they interact with the world and the NPCs and monsters react to what they're doing, you're able to create outcomes that both make sense in terms of how the players might think people or monsters or whatever would react, but also surprise them. Also, you have, first of all, the players are going to surprise you by what they do, and you're going to have things react or situations unfold in ways that are surprising. And part of this is the use of probability in an RPG setting, because die rolls are based on the characteristics of the players and the monsters and whatnot, but also sometimes just on outcomes, especially when you get weird rolls that happen that no one expected. And the thing is, when it all seamlessly works together, it creates an environment that I think is just, totally satisfying to the players and to you as the GM. And it isn't, all on you. It isn't all, I've got to come up with all this stuff and have it all ready to go, and then the players are presented it, and then they go in a different direction. And it really helps you avoid railroading. And all of this can be expressed in kind of the standard terminology of storytelling, in which you have a protagonist that drives the story along, and then they're opposed by an antagonist, right? And then as the story goes along, you have rising tension, rising action between the protagonist and antagonist, till finally there's a climax, and one side, defeats the other or comes to an agreement or whatever. And then you have a new normal situation that reflects this resolution, and then it all starts again. And this occurs in a D&D setting with the players, but in a specialized way. And I talked about this in a very early video I did about the first encounter that to run when you have a group of players in your world. I'll put a link up here to that video. And like a lot of those old videos, I packed all sorts of concepts in there. And I had a YouTuber who was a friend of mine from the very beginning, and he would watch my videos and say, KR, you got about 6 or 7 concepts. Like I mentioned in that video, I talked about whether or not you should fudge, balance in terms of encounters, how they should be presented in the first encounter, how things are done, all this stuff, right? And he's like, for instance, a storytelling concept that you just kind of mentioned in passing is you might want to unpack that sometime. And then in the last year, since running this live table game again, and not just being on the internet, it really comes into play in terms of watching my players interact with this world and how much their actions create situations with the NPCs and monsters and whatnot in surprising ways. So the basic theory that I'm proposing here after that long intro is that the players are the protagonists of an RPG game. They're in every scene. And even if things are described that happened in the past or somewhere else contemporaneously, the players are hearing about it. They're in that scene hearing about this as it goes on. But the thing is, as the players move through the world, they are the antagonists. Why? Because all the NPCs and monsters who the players are reacting to the players who are thwarting their goals, what they want to do. Because unlike a story or film or whatever that's written by a single person or a team of people or whatever, this story is written by the players with the GM then reacting to those actions to write the reactions of the NPCs and monsters. And this kind of ties into the video that I did last time on improvisation, some tips on how to improvise. And in reality, if you're experienced enough, and I don't necessarily recommend this, but you could start a campaign. You make a map, put some cities down, the players roll up their characters, tell you the background. You just say, okay, you're in this city with those backgrounds, makes sense, and then go from there and just say, what do you want to do? And the players then decide what they want to do, and you can begin to create right from there. Not saying I recommend this, but since the players are driving the action, you can react to that and create things literally on the fly. Because when you ask the players, well, what are you going to do? They might look at you and say, well, what are we supposed to do or what's going on? Because they've played other RPG games and, let's say, traditional type games, and usually the GM will say, okay, so-and-so, the shopkeeper has come up missing, or there's a caravan that needs guards, or something that's suitable for first level characters if you're starting at that level. So they're sort of waiting for you to say, okay, you meet in a tavern and you hear about this, but you can just ask them, well, what is it that you want to do? Because, of course, ultimately what the players want to do, depending on the system you're using, is to go out in the world and go up in level and get more items, or get more advanced skills. Let's say something like, I don't know, like Shadowrun or something like that, or the Burning Wheel, where you're tested against things. But you become more and more capable at a set of skills worked into the games, whether it's a class system or just pure skills or whatever. You're interested in advancing your way through the world and then having, adventures and, having near-death experiences or something, or saving something, or, accomplishing some goal. So that's what you're trying to do. But how is it that you plan to do that? So your classic RPG traditional setting with adventurers is they go out into the world to make their fortunes, and they find treasure and magic and become more skilled at their class, right? That's what they want to do. And the means to do that traditionally has been those things I mentioned, right? There's some mystery, there's some activity on the border of the province, some monsters are attacking farmers, something like that, and the players decide we'll go off and do that, or some, dungeon has been discovered or something. The players go do that because they know, having played these games, well, that's where you find, monsters and treasure and all that stuff. And you can just say, okay, there's a caravan that needs guards, and they go, okay, why? Because the players might feel a little lost if you just say, well, what do you want to do? And don't give them any clues. Let them drive the action, purely drive the action. They may want you to tell them something, right? They're used to that. But the thing is, their characters have grown up in your world at the point at which we start the game. They know something about it. They have a background. They have a class. They have something that they do well, and they've learned things about it. Let's say their background. They're an acolyte at a local temple. Well, they know the activities of the temple. And they know if they say, well, anything going on? Do I hear anything at the temple that's interesting? And then you can improvise something and say, well, there's this priest that, goes out on the road alone. He's kind of a traveling monk, and he hasn't returned, and he went to City Y. Another player who you're talking to says, this guy that worked with his father now is a merchant, has a caravan that's going out if you want to do that kind of thing. So they might also hear a shopkeeper has come up missing, and his wife is very concerned. It's someone that one of the players knows or has dealt with, or they have a merchant background or something like that. Because once they get used to this, once they play in my world, they realize all I got to do is just start doing stuff, and things are going to happen. Because I am not just the protagonist. I'm the antagonist. I'm going to be thwarting or helping, people in their goals. And this leads us to the final and in some ways most intriguing twist on the storytelling model of an RPG game. The players and the GM are also the viewer of the story. Like the reader of a novel, the viewer of a film, they're sitting there watching this unfold as the protagonist, as the antagonist, but also as the viewer. You see this after the game when everyone's discussing what happened and what their theories are and what's going on, and sometimes in-game. Depending on how much you allow that. I do allow my players, if they state that I want to ask this in-game and the situation isn't right in the middle of some super intense thing and they want to talk about this or they want to ask me a question, would I know X? Generally speaking, I'm not like, you're in the game, you can only talk as your character or something like that. Because the thing is, and I have a Discord member who brought this up on the Discord where he said, hey, I listen to what my players are talking about, their theories about things, and I may incorporate them. And I said, that's a really good idea. Now, what you want to be careful about, if they know that you're doing that, one, they might try to manipulate that process, but two, it lowers the immersion thing. Because as they're viewing this, they also, as players, want to be immersed in the game such that if they know that they just can say something or suggest something. Daniel Orton of Bandits Keep told me about a player that said, I don't like it when you tell me, I just rolled for this thing randomly. Who is the king now or whatever? And he goes, I want the immersion. I want it to feel like I'm in a real world that exists. Because this is sometimes when people talk about collaboration games or story games and I don't think those games are necessarily, I want to be the king, I want to be the master of the world and just rule, and that's what I've decided, and that's what has to happen, right? It's not that. But if they know that they're influencing the basic structure of the world in some ways, they lose that immersion. And you could say that's an illusionist thing. I've heard those as sneer marks, simulationists, all that kind of stuff, which I have no interest in. You play whatever game you want to play. But I'm saying that in this model of the players being the viewers, I don't want to see the wheels turning, the plot creaking when I'm watching a film or reading a book. I want it to seem real. I want to be surprised by what happens. I want to be, I never saw that coming. And if you're driving the story in an obvious way where I can just manipulate the GM, you lose the fun of watching this unfold. And the great way to create unexpected outcomes that are satisfying and whatever, and whether or not you're just improvising this, is when the players, they hear about the shopkeeper missing and they go to the shop and there's the partner and they start questioning them. How does the shopkeeper's spouse or partner or family members, how do they react when the players start asking them? And first of all, you may just improvise a relationship between one of the players that makes sense here, but you may not. You may say they're just a stranger, they just heard this, and they decide to go here. And if they react, are they super helpful? Do they tell them everything they know? It's obvious that they're telling them the truth, or is there some way the players detect, I think that person's lying? And depending on the system, you want to do that, they do a deception check against perception or something like that. Or do you just tell them, you just have been in the world enough and this person's not a very good liar. Something's going on here. Something's up. And how do you determine that? The players, you just threw out this shopkeeper thing. They go there. Do you roll 1, 2, 3, they're lying on it. They're in on it. 4, 5, 6, they're not. Or 25% chance they're in on it. And if they are, what's going on here? What do the players then hang out and say, well, we're going to watch this shop. So then you decide, okay, at night, a group of disreputable people come to the back of the shop and the players interrupt this. And what happens, right? Who is this? And you're doing this because they expressed an interest. Now, if you want to write this down, especially, between sessions, if the players are interested in something that's maybe a little more long-term. But if you're doing this right away, you're determining how this occurs based on the players' actions, because they may not say we want to hang out here. They may just say, well, they're lying, but I don't want to get involved in this. I guess we'll just go do something else. And you should allow that. You shouldn't have them be like attacked by the thieves. You're sitting there thinking, it'll be a group of thieves that are doing something, so I better make this happen. Let their actions drive things. Because another element of this is that the NPCs and the monsters are watching this unfold as well. Because you're not writing out their reactions. It's not a story that's being written or a film, from a script. So when the players go, if you decide it's a bunch of thieves working in Congress with the shopkeeper's partner and the partner, the other person that disappeared, found out what was happening, they took care of him or something, or holding him hostage, whatever. And the thieves come and they see these player characters, adventurer types, hanging around, asking questions. Or after they leave, this person goes to the gang boss and says, hey, there's pesky, meddling kids over here, right? Trying to figure out what's going on. And if the players follow them, okay, but you don't have to have that. They could be doing this off screen. They're reacting to what the players have done, and they are watching this story unfold. Look at these people come. Now they're meddling in my business. And this is the story structure of an RPG game that is so fascinating. So think about that story model when you're running in your campaign. Think about reacting to what the players are doing. Again, you may have everything worked out, but you're always trying to avoid railroading. You're always trying to allow them to drive the action. You're always thinking about, well, how are, the creatures in my world, the NPCs or whatever, how are they going to react to what these players are doing such that they are truly the protagonists of the story in every scene, relevant to everything that happens, but also creating those reactions in a good way, because that will give the players a sense of agency and a sense of commitment and investment in your world, and it'll make it really satisfying. And if you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel. Always looking for more. Leave some comments. Tell me your theories on story and, they're in the RPG setting. And of course, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.